my MFC Capstone presentation, Supporting Corporate Engagement and Forest Stewardship on Public Lands in Toronto, Ontario. My supervisors are Dr. Sandy Smith of the University of Toronto and Murray Fulmer of Sanofi Pasteur. To help you understand the problem, there are approximately 11,000 hectares of natural heritage green space in the Toronto area that are managed by the City of Toronto, and nearly 250,000 hectares that are the responsibility of the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, TRCA. It is easy to understand that neither has the resources to comprehensively manage all that land. Support from non-governmental organizations and local stewardship groups can help if the city government allows them to do so. At the moment, only a few stewardship organizations are allowed to perform stewardship activities on public land in Toronto without City of Toronto or TRC direct supervision. My project focused on stewardship management planned by Sanofi Pasteur on a ravine bordering their North York campus. They have applied to the City Council for permission to do so. But why Sanofi Pasteur, you ask? They are the vaccines division of the global French pharmaceutical company Sanofi. As part of their corporate social responsibility, the parent company started a program in 2015 called Planet Mobilization. Biodiversity is one of the elements of this program, and the North York campus of Sanofi Pasteur borders one of Toronto's most biodiverse habitats, a ravine. No major urban center in the world has the ravines that we have here in and around Toronto. No one in Toronto is more than 5 minutes away from any green space. Sanofi Pasteur has created a stewardship plan for their neighboring ravine and hope to set an example for other potential corporate stewards, as well as engage the community to support their efforts. Biodiversity in all natural areas in general are facing many threats. Some of the threats faced are pollution, which includes litter, pictured here in the ravine, climate change, which is causing significant temperature changes and more intense weather, such as increased heavy rain events. This picture is from August 5th, 2020, showing about a 2-meter rise in the river. This flooded many of the areas I was planning to sample that day and covered everything else in mud. Flooding from these heavy rains is exacerbated by another threat, urban sprawl. Invasive plant species are outcompeting native plants for space and nutrients and have the potential to create green deserts where few other plants can grow. Native plants and animals are struggling to keep up with the changes. My objectives in support of Sanofi Pasteur's stewardship plan were to establish a baseline plant inventory for the ravine and recommend next steps for initializing the plan. These next steps include recommending invasive plant management from data collected during the inventory, measuring the effects of stewardship activities, and suggesting some form of better communication between stewardship groups, the city, and the TRCA. My study area was the 30-hectare ravine that forms the western border of Sanofi's North York campus. To the west is Dufferin Street, to the north is Steeles Avenue West, and the south is bordered by G. Ross Lord Park. The West Don River meanders through it, and it is surrounded on 3 sides by urban development. The ravine land is owned by the TRCA and managed by the City of Toronto. For the baseline plant inventory, 23 sample plots were surveyed between June and August 2020 using a vegetation sampling protocol, VSP, developed at the University of Toronto. The map shows the location of the plots, which were chosen from a randomly generated grid and organized to be within the TRCA's ecological land classification polygons, the borders of which can be seen within the study area. Each plot covered 400 square meters and included an intensive inventory of the plant community. I was expertly assisted in my data collection and plant identification by Carla Tim and Jelani Duali, pictured in the top right. That's Jelani and me at the bottom. When we were not swatting at mosquitoes, staying hydrated and socially distancing, we appreciated being outside. The pictures here show some of the diversity of the sample plots that we encountered. On some days, we spent a lot of time wrestling through thick riverbank crepe, bottom left, or wading through the fields of spotted Joe pieweed, bottom right. It certainly was an interesting summer. Overall, there were nearly 250 different species of plants in the sampled plots. In almost every one, we seemed to find a new species that we had not seen in previous plots. Very few were flowering, which hindered our identification efforts, so we were quite excited to see flowers when we did. A few of the plants we encountered are considered invasive. I chose to look at the 4 worst invaders in our sample plots: common buckthorn, garlic mustard, Norway maple, and dog strangling vine. Now the worst, common buckthorn, can grow in very dense thickets. I know. They were found in all 23 plots, covering from trace amounts to approximately 60% of the 400 square meter plots. We recorded buckthorn from sprouts to trees, the largest with a diameter of breast height of 24 centimeters. It is possible that it could be found everywhere in the ravine. Control is the only thing that can be attempted, as eradication from the ravine would be impossible. Garlic mustard was recorded in all but 1 plot, covering from trace to about 62.5% of some of the plots. We found it in both of its stages, the ground covering basal rosettes of first-year growth and the tall flowering seed producing stage. Just as with the buckthorn, control is recommended for garlic mustard in the ravine because eradication would be impossible. The other 2 invasive plants were found in lower numbers. Norway maples, from seedlings to large trees, were found in 10 plots at up to 11% coverage. Control is suggested, but at the moment, city bylaws do not allow the removal of trees of any size, not even seedlings, from public parks by stewardship groups. Dog strangling vine was only found, surprisingly, as a few individual plants in 4 plots. It is possible to eradicate the dog strangling vine in the ravine if action is taken soon, unless, of course, there are large pockets that we did not see because they were not in our sample plots. In my attempt to establish lines of communication with the city, the TRCA, and other stewardship groups, I emailed them requesting information about the details of previous stewardship activities that might have taken place in this ravine, and any data they might have on their monitoring efforts. Having volunteered with the City of Toronto's Green Toronto as a park ambassador and a tree planting captain, I was able to obtain a map and detailed list of the trees and shrubs planted in the spring of 2016, as you can see in the top right, but no monitoring data. I was told that they don't usually share any of that information, but I volunteered for my informant, and he is a recent MFC graduate. He even gave me a contact at the TRCA. The TRCA was able to provide a map of a planting area from 2009, there at the bottom right, but nothing more than that. I found an article on the Toronto Field Naturalist website, which briefly mentioned a planting in G. Ross-Lord Park on June 8, 2019, which I got really excited about because I was hoping it would be in my study area. I did receive a response from them, but they referred me back to the article that sent me to them and told me no further information is available at this time because the office is closed due to COVID-19, and unfortunately, no other organizations responded to my repeated emails. There must be a better way to share knowledge than this. Going forward, I will be recommending that data be collected for all stewardship events in the ravine with regular observations made to measure the effects of the stewardship activities. According to previous research and an email conversation with Daniela Purik-Mladenovich, I will suggest that to monitor plant biodiversity, PSP should be repeated every 5 to 7 years on the plots sampled this summer, including 12 more this coming summer to fill in some of the areas that I was unable to sample. BioBlitzes are public events that invite the community into natural areas to search for and collect photographs or samples of plants and animals. These are brought to tables with experts who identify and catalog the finds.
The minute mark.
Thank you. Annual BioBlitzes engage and educate the community, which are important aspects of stewardship to the city and Sanofi. They also collect valuable plant and animal data. iNaturalist, which we used frequently over the summer, is a smartphone application that users can send photos to, and other users help to identify the flora and fauna in the photographs. The location details are recorded as well. I recommend the promotion of iNaturalist at the annual BioBlitzes. Promoting the use of iNaturalist can help park visitors to collect data all year. I will also suggest that local university students and faculty be encouraged to get involved with biodiversity data collection in the ravine. Future internships or scholarly studies can add to the collected data for the ravine. I would also like to suggest a website where data from stewardship monitoring efforts from around the city can be stored and shared publicly. I believe that the reestablishment of the Stewardship Network of Ontario, which seems to have been disbanded in 2017, or the newly formed Southern Ontario Nature Coalition can help to implement this. In conclusion, I truly believe that anything worth doing is worth doing well. Anytime that we put the time and resources into work is important to stewardship, the outcomes should be recorded regularly and shared. The results of successes as well as failures can help to improve future efforts by those doing the work and other groups. My report and the data collected during my summer internship will assist with the inaugural stewardship effort of a corporate entity, Sanofi Pasteur. If approved by the Toronto City Council, Sanofi will be the first business to initiate and manage stewardship activities in a public park in Toronto. With the success of this plan, Sanofi's efforts should set an example in stewardship for other businesses and non-governmental organizations in the city and elsewhere, supporting the management of the large areas of green space that we have in the city. As you can see, I have a lot of people to thank, but the most important are my supervisors, U of T's Sandy Smith, with her infinite patience, and Marie Fulmer from Sanofi, as well as Paul Scrivener, my tireless VSP team, Carla Tim and Jelani Duali, and my wife, Angela, and her endless patience with me. Thank you very much for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much, Gary. That was great. We will begin questions with Murray.
Great, thanks, Patrick, and thanks, Gary, for the presentation. Just to give you a little background, so I'm the Deputy Director of Environment at the Sanofi Pasteur site in Toronto, and this was really I guess, a discovery year for us. We started this initial discussion about 2 years ago with the TRCA and the city to try and initiate something around stewardship. So it's been a long process to get in place, but this was really the first steps in that plan that Gary referred to. So we're looking at, initially, this is a 5-year plan. So this was the completion of year 1. And we've got lots of things left to do. And certainly Gary and his team were able to make, I think, excellent progress in moving us forward on this. Sanofi looks at this as a step for us, right? Certainly we have a vested interest in the health and sustainability of that ravine adjacent to our property. So we're hoping to continue this in future years as well. So I don't have any specific questions. Certainly Gary and Paul and myself had regular contacts and meetings throughout the entire process. So it was all very transparent, and certainly thank you, Sandy, for your support in making this happen and moving us forward. So Gary, again, thanks for all your efforts, and I think this puts us in a great position to move forward for next year, where we will tackle some additional actions, and the recommendations Gary made is certainly going to form the basis for that process.
Thanks very much, Murray. John, did you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, this may be a question for Murray as well, but I'm just curious, when you talk about potential stewardship activities, I'm just wondering how ambitious they might be, like how far beyond, say, monitoring to to active management might it go? And then I guess a question for Gary would be, how might your results contribute to that?
Sure, I'll start first. So within Sanofi as an organization, Gary referred to this Planet Mobilization Program, which is really our environmental strategy globally. So this is being addressed across the organization. This seemed like the best fit for the Toronto site from the point of view that we have this ravine adjacent to our property. So we certainly thought it made sense for us to actively participate in it. So moving forward, there's probably a couple of different phases of this. Like I mentioned, this was really kind of the discovery year, just to see how this would work and how we could, actually, and with COVID, that sort of overlaid another level of complexity to it. But we managed to make it work. In the next few years, we would probably be looking to extend some additional baselining. So, potentially bird studies or small mammals or other things to sort of give us a sense of what the health of the ravine is. But we also want to look at some of the engagement activities that we could take going forward. So for example, our employees, certainly we'd like to get them engaged in the process as well. There's a neighborhood association of the residential area next to our property on the east side. So we'd like to get them involved as well. So it becomes a broader initiative, not just Sanofi looking to move forward with it, but extending it out into the community as well. So I would say this, we don't have a fully, firmed up plan because we're kind of building it as we go. But we've got some really good, first steps in making that happen.
And for my part, from the information that I gathered, we spent a lot of time, my group and I, we spent a lot of time going through the bush. A lot of places were very difficult to get to. We noticed a lot of things that otherwise wouldn't have been noticed being off the beaten path. There were a few areas of erosion. There is a lot of trash that you don't see that comes from the river itself. When there are flooding events, that brings a lot of trash downstream, and this is stuff that isn't seen that can be cleaned up at some point in time. The invasive species that I recorded out there, the levels that I saw, I expected a lot more in things like things like DSV, the dog strangling vine, but I was pleasantly surprised. And the research that I've done into the monitoring, as well as the social events that can be done, like bioblitzes, that can bring the public into the ravine, teach them about what's going on, teach them about Sanofi Pasteur and their passion for biodiversity and supporting that. I think that just about covers it. And I really think I'm really passionate about monitoring. It's like there are so many things. You see places like there's a search website called Ecosia that says that they plant 1 million trees. They plant 1 tree for every search that you do. But how many of those trees survive? And that's one thing that I think that we should know. So if you go out there and plant, I was really disappointed not to get monitoring data from the TRCA or from the city with the planting sites that they gave me. And I think that going forward, anything that's done, any plants that are planted, any invasive species that are removed, there's got to be some kind of formal data collection process that, looks at, okay, we took 500-pound bags of DSV out of the ravine. How long did it take to come back? Did we plant anything afterwards to try to keep the DSV from coming back? Did it work? You got to know that stuff. And as well as the monitoring can also help with, I did see the places, one of the places that was planted, and saw the protective bands that are put around the base of the trees. If someone's going out there to monitor the next year and then 3 to 5 years later, that's something that can be seen and taken care of and removed before it either just kills the tree or becomes pollution within the ravine.
Great, Gary. Thank you very much for that Great answer. Are there any other questions in the audience? Any other comments or questions about this interesting topic? Daniela.
Gary, excellent work. Your words are like a song for my ear, because that's been my profession for so many years in Southern Ontario. I really like that you mentioned about strategic stewardship and someone to coordinate all of these good efforts and good energy out there. Have you put more thought? Who would be that? You mentioned Ontario Stewardship Network, which unfortunately doesn't exist. But I think now the cities are the ones that should take the lead on that.
There is still a website for the Stewardship Network, which actually contains the former business partners and people from a huge list of organizations. Contact can be made with them to say, okay, look, I know you guys let this go. I'm motivated and I want to bring this thing back to life. And I just recently learned about the other one, the Southern Ontario Nature Coalition is something brand new. They just started. I did a survey from them a week or two ago, and I went to their website, and there's not a lot of information as of yet because they're just getting started. But I emailed them and told them what I wanted to do in regards to forming a coalition with stewardship groups to share knowledge and to share lessons learned. There are a lot of people that know a lot of things, and I think that something like this could be really, really helpful. With Sanofi Pasteur starting this stewardship effort, lessons learned from what I've gone through and what I hope to go through in the not too distant future can be put on the website and shared with other people. And maybe I can, myself and other people on the website can get advice. So
just to let you know, we are working on federal government on something like that, Stewardship Network for Canada. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, and if I could just add to Gary's comments, when we started the discussions with TRCA in the City of Toronto 2 years ago, there was a lot of hesitancy about how this would work. And through the discussions we've had, both of those groups are now looking at this as a potential template to take to other corporate organizations to help with their efforts. Because like Gary mentioned, they will never have the resources to be able to manage that level of space anytime. So I think they're hopeful that this can show real value for both them and for us, and that they can take this out to other groups and other organizations, whether they be public or private, to use as a template or a model going forward.
Great, thank you, Marie. We are out of time for this particular session, and we're ready to move on to the next presentation. Gary, if you could stop sharing your screen, please, so that